Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. My name is Misha Bush, and today I talk to Fergal Smith from Ireland. He's a former pro surfer who decided to become a farmer using regenerative agriculture principles. He's now managing Moy Hill, a farm with more than 60 acres of land on which they are planting trees, building soil, and growing food for the community. Please enjoy the conversation, and if you like this interview or others, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below to let us know what you think of it. And now, without further ado, Fergal Smith. Well, again, Fergal, thank you for being on this call. I really appreciate it. And also just wanted to express that I have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing with Moy Hill Farm. So thanks for being here.
You're very welcome. And I'm happy to be here. And thanks for inviting me. And hopefully I can share some of our story.
Cool. Let's go back a little bit in time. It's obviously something you have talked and are talking about a lot, but I wanted to talk a little bit about your surfing background. That's kind of a big thing about your personal brand, almost, if I can say like that, but definitely of your life story. What was it about surfing that attracted you at an early age?
I don't know. I was chatting to someone recently about it, and it's not like I didn't try other sports. Like I tried it all, and but once I tried surfing, there wasn't anything else anymore. It was
right,
and it was hard because surfing, unless you're on the beach, becomes quite a sport that you're driving a lot, back and forward. And we were, an hour drive from, where I grew up, so it wasn't easy. And my parents still run an organic vegetable farm, so they didn't have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
But once I tried surfing, there was nothing else that would really replace it. Why? I just think it's kind of, it's so unique and special to be riding such a changeable piece of nature. Like it's not like going to a skate park or a basketball court or whatever. Every time you go, it's going to be different.
Yeah. And
even though 9 times out of 10, it's generally not as good as you want, but there's always that magic in what will it be like, and will I be able to ride a better wave? There's so much unknown, I think, in going surfing. You don't know what the waves are going to be like. You don't know what you're going to be able to do on the waves. It's all very exciting. Whereas, other sports maybe are a little bit more kind of, swimming or whatever. It's very steady. You kind of get little goals. Whereas surfing, all of a sudden, you could just be on the best wave of your life. You never knew it was going to happen, and it just, and then you're kind of blown away. And then once you have one of those feelings, which comes from the very first wave you ever catch, that feeling, and then you're kind of always, drawn back to, I wonder, could I get an experience like that again? And now I know how to do that much. I wonder, can I do this much? And it just kind of, but I think it's so unpredictable. That makes it really enticing, and you're always wondering how good the waves are going to be, and you get sucked into the whole thing of it. So I think that's why I found it so
Is there a fear factor? I don't know, at some point still, maybe you're not scared of anything anymore, but is there still a part in you that not like fear, but like a sort of a thrill of it's gonna be exciting?
There's always fear. Like that's I don't know. It's interesting when people look at surfers riding crazy waves. They think the surfer is crazy, but the wave is crazy. But the surfer has actually spent hours and hours and hours of really working their way up to it. So what they're actually doing is the same as you going for your first surf.
Right.
It's for them. They've worked their way up. So I find surfers that are doing really crazy things are generally very calm and calculated, and they know their body, they know their equipment. It looks crazy, but it's very calculated. So the fear is always there, because otherwise you get hurt, and otherwise, you get in trouble. So the fear keeps the level of how far you can push it, and you go a little bit more each time. And you just kind of got to work with where you're at, and it's a very slow thing. Like, because if you imagine surfing, it's how many seconds are you actually standing up? You could be out there for 2 hours, but you might only be standing up for 30 seconds in the whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
So you've got 30 seconds of learning until the next time you go back. and that
Right.
could be a day or 2 days or a week later, and then you get another 30 seconds. So it's a very slow sport to gain experience in. You can't just, go on the skate ramp for 4 hours and keep practicing. It doesn't work with that. So
Mm.
yeah, the fear and the unpredictability makes it it's not something you can just throw fear out the window and go for it, because there's so much risk involved
Yeah.
that yeah, it takes a bit of time.
Did you ever envy other sports where, because you mentioned you have such a small window of opportunity sometimes to actually get to gain experience and train? And with other sports, if you do running, obviously it can be much more structured. Like, I'm going to 1 hour of
Yeah,
exactly this.
yeah, like you might have it just kind of, oh, I wish I could surf as much as I could go, yeah, running or skateboarding or cycling, but
Yeah.
no, you're not envious in the way that what the experience of surfing is. So you're kind of that that is far more. You've tried skateboarding, you tried cycling, and they don't quite do it. So surfing is
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's no other
it
way.
kind of overrides all that. But yeah,
Right.
it can be frustrating, especially in Ireland where the weather is so changeable that it's not, if you're in Hawaii or California or somewhere where the weather's a bit more consistent, the waves can be good for maybe days and days, and it's a bit more regular. But in
Right.
Ireland, you might have 2 hours where it's the best day of the year, and then after that, it might be good for weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a hard one to work with, but it
Yeah.
also makes it more exciting, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess that sounds like one way of kind of countering that unpredictability of the opportunity of getting to service, to travel to places where you get a little bit more opportunity, let's say. And from what I understood, that's also the traveling part was one of the reasons for you to say, like, okay, I can't do this anymore. This is too much pressure on the environment, on the world. I have to do something else that I can do to contribute more to promoting a good cause. Was there a specific moment for you where you when you realized you wanted to step out, like something just happened or somebody said something? Do you remember that?
Yeah, no, it was very clearly a point, and yeah, it definitely built up over years. And because of my kind of background in organic horticulture, it was always niggling away at me that the surfing lifestyle wasn't really that environmentally friendly. But I was, pretty headstrong surf head who didn't get too bothered by it for a long time and just wanted to surf. And then, yeah, I was in Tahiti. I go away every kind of, so when the season here ends is kind of April, May, well, even March, April, when the storms slow down.
Yeah.
And then I go away for the summer, and then I come back in like September. So I just off to Tahiti for the whole summer, and I was there about 2 weeks, and I had a really bad knee injury. I smashed my knee off the reef, and I didn't know if I was going to have to go home or could I keep traveling. So I was just laid up for about another 2 weeks at a friend's house and just sitting on the couch wondering if my knee was going to get better or not. And it was the same time as the nuclear plant in Japan was sinking into the sea.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't remember what that year is, 2010, maybe 2011. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, whenever that was, and Japan, I'm in Tahiti, we're in the same ocean. And I don't know, it just hit me really hard that I was like, that's not good. And yeah, what am I actually doing that's helping the planet that I live on? And yeah, it kind of I had that light bulb moment, or that feeling of, yeah, that didn't sit well. And then yeah, basically within kind of a flash, my whole way of life was kind of over. I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And
Right.
I thought about it for a few days, and I thought about what else could I do, and what are all the options of making the biggest impact that I can while I'm young and fit and able. And but it all hit me very quickly that I knew I needed to go back and
Yeah. Yeah.
start farming. Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
What was the first year like for you?
Well, if anyone knows about like being hooked on something, it's very hard to go cold turkey and just quit it overnight and expect that you're just gonna adapt fine. So so when I decided I was gonna come back, and I emailed all my sponsors and told my family that that was it. Now I'm gonna come home and start farming, and that was it. I can't fly anymore. It was yeah, it was a big shock to everyone and myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to integrate this in not a one fell swoop. And I wasn't moving back to my parents' farm. I was living in now a different county that I'm not from. I didn't have family. I didn't have any land. So, as much as I was saying I was going back farming, I didn't have any land. And yeah, so it wasn't going to happen overnight. And I realized that. So yeah, I kind of still traveled up and down the country and surf loads. I think the next year I still did another flight. I did one more just to kind of wean myself off.
Yeah.
And then yeah, kind of word got out what I was interested in, and kind of a friendly businessman that I know said I could use half an acre. So that was like, that's a nice little start. And I started with a community garden there. And again, I wasn't, I was still surfing, and it wasn't a big shock to my lifestyle. And then he said I could borrow an acre, and then I was using the acre and the half acre, and we did that for 2 years. And then land came for sale from, well, it didn't come for sale, just neighbors knew what we were doing, and they knew we were on borrowed land,
Right.
and it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. And then they said, oh, there's these 17 acres that haven't really been used for years, you should ask the owner. And yeah, the owner was interested, and we bought that. And then 2 years after that, land came for sale right next door to us. And yeah, which very rarely happens. And we didn't have any money, but we bought it anyway, and got ourselves into huge amounts of debt. And yeah, we're still in the process of paying that off. But yeah, so it's
Awesome.
taken 7-8 years of a process to be now with the farm, building up kind of the whole infrastructure of the place.
Right.
It didn't happen overnight. That first year was kind of just coming back and surfing and hanging out, and not really, farming for, quite some years, really. It was all steps. And I think that's the whole thing. And that's why I stopped. Like, I was probably 24 at the time when I was in Tahiti. And I remember saying, like, I'm still quite young. I don't have to settle down and become a farmer overnight, but I know how long it takes. And I know how long it takes to kind of integrate into the community and build up infrastructure and gain experience. So I was like, if I start now, I'll actually in 10 years time be in a place where I'm running a farm. But if I wait until I'm in my 30s,
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
take another 5 or 6 years. So I'm 33 now. So it's been a process, and now the farm is running, and we kind of can get going. But yeah, nothing happens overnight in farming. So I kind of realized that, and that's why I made the clear cut to stop traveling, because you can't really be farming and traveling at the same time. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess nothing, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So,
exactly, yeah.
yeah. And how was it for you mentally? Because obviously, everybody can stay motivated for a week or so, but to stay motivated when there's obstacles on the way, and it takes a long time. How was it for you to, especially the first few years, to go through
Yeah,
that?
like, to be honest, I've never ever questioned, my decision, or like, was it a good idea? Should I have kept my sponsorship and kept surfing for another couple of years? Like, no, I've never looked back on I wish I'd done more surfing, like, because yeah, it's very hard to explain, but the subtle benefits of being in one place and being committed to an area and building up nice relationships with your neighbors, and being connected to something that's long lasting. It's hard to explain to someone who's still on the surfing traveling buzz,
Yeah.
because they haven't felt it. But the subtle feelings of being in one place and being of purpose to an area, yeah, it kind of starts to be a more wholesome feeling than any wave or buzz that literally only lasts for kind of seconds, and then you're chasing it again. So yeah, and then the big difference is that, and a lot of people don't realize, is that I wasn't a surfer who became a farmer. I was a farmer's son who became a surfer.
Yeah.
So for me, going back farming is kind of just completely natural. Like, there's no, it's kind of like how I grew up. This is what I
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a surprise. And I think it is very hard for surfers or anyone not from a farming background to be living a certain lifestyle and then try and transition to farming when they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's very unrewarding, overnight. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and no real instant gratification. So I think that is very difficult for people who don't know what farming is. But for me, that's what I grew up doing, and I loved it. I always loved helping my dad, so it's not a surprise to me, and I just feel kind of
Right.
more at ease in that kind of lifestyle, I think.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. You knew what you were getting into.
Yeah.
So then it's easier to you could see things coming, that the challenges on the way. So I guess one of the success factors is that you already knew what you were gonna get into.
Yeah.
And besides the effective ways of like actually growing the food, what would you say are other some key success factors for making your current farming business profitable, and how do you make it grow?
Yeah, I think it is the attitude and like the understanding that it's going to be hard work. And like any business, you don't get a business off the ground overnight. It takes 3-5 years kind of thing. And I think with, when you're working with seasons and nature, you've only got one season to make so much of a change, and then you got to reevaluate and then make another step the next year.
Yeah.
And I'd be looking at a lot of different farmers that are further ahead down the line than me, who are more successful, and they all kind of say the same thing, like, you got to give it 10 years of really going at it before you're going to see if it's actually working or not. And yeah, so I was very aware of that it wasn't going to happen overnight. And I think that attitude keeps you in the game and not lose enthusiasm and kind of get down, because it is definitely hard to keep the energy up, because basically you're taking on a pretty bad business model where you work endless hours, you don't really get paid for it. It's huge capital expenses in the beginning of buying land, paying for infrastructure. So you're looking at 10-15 year turnaround to ever kind of pay all that stuff back.
Yeah.
So it's not a business that you would do for financial reasons. If that's why you're getting into it. Now, long term, it is a very stable occupation. Everyone needs to eat, so it's not a bad business to be in. But when you start from zero and start from buying everything from scratch, it's a very hard business to really see as the pros for it. Now, I think if you're inheriting a farm, it's much easier. You've got all the infrastructure and the land paid for. That's something you can get up and going a lot quicker. But when you're starting from a total outside position, it's a big undertaking. And yeah, I think knowing that is the main thing that will see you through kind of making it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are basically past that stage. I mean, you're almost paying off your debt, and you've built the infrastructure. You have the actual farm with all the land. What are your current biggest obstacles that you're facing?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me personally, I think my biggest hurdle is, like, I'm a doer and I work hard, and I don't really worry about the workload. But I'm not a businessman. I'm a farmer, a sense, and that's a big problem in farming. Is farmers love farming and love being on the land and they love working hard, but it comes down to marketing and accounts and all these things that farmers can't really pay people to do because they don't make enough money. So you actually, to make a successful farming business, you need to get good at those things. And I've quite happily ignored a lot of that stuff because I'm much happier getting stuck into infrastructure or whatever needs to be done. But now we're at that stage of a lot of that's off the ground. Yeah, there's a whole phase of me actually getting behind the scenes and figuring out the business side of things and getting that really clear in my head, so I know what I'm working towards. And that's stuff that I've definitely need to work on. And then it's like the scale thing of, like, it's much easier. Most farms are just standalone farmer. It's the farmer and the family, and that's it. And that's very easy to manage. But you can only do so much then. You can only manage so many things. And for me, a successful farm is a diverse farm with as many different enterprises as possible. So you're then diversity on the land makes a whole array of ecosystem benefits of having diversity into the ecosystem. But then you can't do everything. So then you're looking into employing people, and that brings a whole other thing in farming. And most people, unless they have a farming background, they don't understand the workload and how much goes into keeping a farm going. So then one of the biggest challenges I think in farming that we have, especially in the Western world, is we just have a knowledge and skills drought. We don't have experienced young farmers who, know the ins and outs of farming very well. We've people from a farming background, but then they might have more of a conventional background, which is sometimes hard to rewire. But then we also have really new people who know the science and all the benefits of regenerative farming, but they don't have a farming background. So they don't have the work ethic that comes with farming. So it's very hard to find people like, I'm not claiming I know, the stats, but like people who would be training a lot of farmers in the Western world, on internships, they say if you got 1 in 100 through an internship that actually can be an employee, maybe 2 or 3, you'd be doing well. Because there is no 9 to 5 in farming, and you really, you work hard. Unless you work really, really hard, you ain't getting paid. Like, whereas most jobs you turn up and you get paid. So that's a hard thing. So we're at that stage now where we need to start making the farm, a proper business, and then really having people who really know what they're doing. But then you need to make sure they do know what they're doing so you can pay them properly. So there's just that stage. So I'm in the point now where I'm having a new guy who's really good and give him a year of an internship, and hopefully he can do it, and then he'll be, managing the whole side of the farm as an employee. And that's hopefully where it goes. But it's also a big step, and it's, you want to make sure you get it right, because financially it's always kind of risky with a farm. Like, everything in farming is a risk, between the weather, the marketplace, your own health. If your health goes down, the business instantly suffers. So, there's a lot of risk in farming at all times. And so it's trying to make it as robust as possible in a very variable business. So but that's it.
What if somebody gave you $1 billion? What is there anything you would? Because it doesn't sound like those problems are necessarily solvable with money. It's more that they exist because there's not so much margin, or you have all that risk always involved.
Money definitely isn't the total answer. It depends on your context. So, and it depends what enterprises you run. Because farming is, a very broad sector, and you could be involved in horticulture or poultry, or, field scale veg or livestock. The simpler enterprises to run, which you could run on bigger scale and on your own, is livestock. They're much a hand, you just got to move animals, cows, sheep, even goats. You move them daily onto fresh grass, and that's essentially it. Now, there's a lot of infrastructure to set up, but that's a big cost. But the big one is the actually acquiring of land, So a livestock enterprise is very simple to run, but you need hundreds of acres to make that a proper enterprise.
Right.
So we only have, about 60 acres. So we're in a kind of a strange bracket where livestock is what I'd love to do in lots of ways, because the lovely thing about livestock is you can manage huge tracts of land very easily, and you're probably making the biggest regenerative effect you can make on the ecosystem. So there's the biggest effect on the land mass, and it's the easiest for labor, but you need to have the resource base, which is a hard one. So if you had the $1 billion, I would be buying more land or leasing more land and having more livestock. But when you don't have that, then you have to diversify your enterprises down into smaller scale enterprises that don't need as much land. And that goes into the poultry, which is a really good one. Again, it regenerates land. It doesn't need as big land base, but there's a lot more labor input. And that's where you need people who know what they're doing, and you can't expect to manage all of it. So it's kind of complex. And it also depends on what your marketplace is like. Is there a demand for certain things, and how far you're gonna have to travel? And
you're right.
But
well, it does seem the regenerative agriculture movement is growing over the years. So I hope there's also a bigger labor pool for you to choose from in the future. As you mentioned, it's hard to find good people that A, have the knowledge, and B, also have the work ethic, and know that it's not just a 9 to 5, and
Yeah.
know what to put in.
Yeah.
In your TED talk that's available on YouTube, you mentioned that farmers are often not really up to date when it comes to things like the internet and Facebook, and that there would be a big opportunity for them to change their business model if they would make more use of those things and make a more sustainable income, I would say.
Yeah.
In a lot of industries, you see that the internet is taking out the middleman, and that brands are going like direct to consumer without having a distribution chain or like a reseller in between. Um, what do you think will happen on like the large scale with food in that regard? Do you think supermarkets are going to disappear and that we're going to see much more people buying directly from farms?
I certainly hope so.
Right.
Yeah, the supermarket is, it's a hard one because they employ so many people, but they would be the root cause of a lot of our agricultural problems. They would be very much a part of the capitalist model of, they can say, oh, we've got, big buying power and we can get it cheaper from France. So why don't you lower your price? Otherwise you don't get it. And that's been going on since the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
where at the beginning it was a nice idea where one guy sold all the farmer's products and the farmer could keep working and he got the price and he just kept working. Whereas then they were the middleman and they said, oh, I can get it cheaper here. And then that's been going on for a long time. And yeah, basically you can't sell produce through those models because you're just never going to make any money. And you're just running faster and faster to try and make anything.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, the biggest opportunity for farmers is selling direct. And yeah, it's great time. It's when, internet is really catching on and online sales and all that kind of stuff. But this is the transition bit where the farmers generally aren't marketers or salespeople, and where, either sons and daughters of the farmer or a customer of a farm that really wants to support them needs to come in and help these farmers cut out the middleman. Because why is the middleman getting 85% of the value? They didn't produce the food. And so what happens is, like, by the farmer only getting a commodity price, they have to go as fast as possible and do as least amount of work to get it done. So the land suffers, the farmer suffers, and the consumer suffers. No one wins in there except the middleman. Whereas if if the farmer sells direct and can do like half the production, they can go a bit slower, they can care more, the farmer's getting paid more, the land is happier, and the consumer's getting better food. So it's like, it's in everyone's interest, bar these few middlemen that are going to lose out. But you're not really helping, the ecosystem or our diets. So,
and do you see a way that you could kind of get the best of both worlds, where you do get a sort of scalable marketing factor and knowledge, and so that farmers can focus on what they like to do and what they're good at without having to pay off all their margin to a middleman?
yeah, I think we're getting in such a good time now. I actually think consumers are a good bit ahead of farmers at the moment. And I think the consumers are ready for the local produce directly from their neighbors. So the demand is there, the interest is there. And then because we've got all this technology and all these different ways of direct selling now, there's not that much work for the farmer to do in getting it there. There just needs a link of, someone to help the farmer do it. And, there's all these online, sales models being created now where farmers essentially can just, dump their story into and off they go. So it's not like a farmer has to now start from scratch and figure out how they're going to sell things.
Right.
So,
and do you think that there's enough supplies? And if you look at the regenerative, or maybe close to that, more regenerative farming, do you think there's enough supply there to supply a large amount of consumers?
No, not at all. No, where if everyone wanted to wake up in the morning and eat regenerative food, we'd all be starving. So that's a big challenge, and that's where I would be most focused on with farmers is like, right, so there is a demand now for the local, the fresh, the regenerative, you know, ecological produced food, like that's there, and that's only going to increase every year. People are going to realize that's where their money needs to go instead of a health bill. And I think that's not going to go away. That's only going to be more and more awakened in people. So then it's the farmers need to shift, but you also realize 50, 60, 70-year-old farmers are probably not going to shift out of the conventional model, or a large proportion aren't going to. So the real thing is, hopefully, as those farms get, you know, passed down, their kids will have changed, and that's a big hope. But also, there is a huge movement of people who are learning about regenerative agriculture, and they really want to do it. And I think they're the more game changers than most people, because they come at it from a very motivated, different slant. So it's about training those people up through internships and getting them really on board that they know what they're doing, and then getting them access to land, which is a big challenge. Like the training them up and the access to land are, you know, big challenges. But I actually think there's probably more potential in those, in that sector of people, because, you know, a lot of people are coming at it from, like, you know, health issues of their own or their family, and, you know, they're really big motivators, and they're going to do whatever it takes. So, and there is models out there of access to land where, you know, there's a 70-year-old farmer, the kids aren't taking it over, and the young up and coming farmer just gets a lifetime lease, so that the land still stays in the family. It's not like they have to sell the land, but we just need people access to it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a lot of the big stuff that needs to be done now. And my kind of main task is hopefully proving or showing a regenerative farming model, but then the teaching of these keen, you know, people that want to kind of take on farms. And that's a big challenge. Like I would say in Ireland alone, you know, we need 10,000 trained up farmers, you know, within a few years.
Mm.
And that needs to get higher each year, because, you know, there's going to be, they say over 60 or 70% of our farmers are over 60. So in 10 or 15 years, you know, they will be retiring.
Yeah.
And a lot of them won't be handing them over to their kids. So there needs to be these trained up individuals ready to do it. And I think that's down to farmers. That's not down to, certainly not down to consumers. It's not even down to governments, because they don't even know what they're on about. So we need regenerative farms that exist to take on young people and train them up. And that's kind of what I would be focusing on now for the next kind of 10 years, is trying to get as many up and coming people trained up. And then those trainees that you train up, a part of their training is they also have to train people behind them.
Right.
You know, if we train people that they have to train people, that's the kind of the model.
Sort of pyramid structure.
Yeah.
In a way. And how do you see, like, how could that process be accelerated? Do you see a role there for government, or like what can other people do to help you to accelerate that, or other people like you that are doing this?
Like, I think it's all happening. Like, there's no way it's going to go any other way. Well, there's conventional crazy stuff that's happening, and we're going to go on polar opposites probably for a while. But the conventional model is, you know, it's in a dead end track of, you know, destroying ecosystems, and it's really not going to go, you know, very well for them. Whereas the regenerative model, it works. Like, you know, we don't have many examples in this part of the world, but there is in the world. So I think the biggest thing that's going to accelerate this process is showing real working examples of the ecosystems getting better, you know, amazing produce, no inputs, healthy food, happy customers, and a proper, you know, bank balance. Like, once all those things are ticked, there's no farmer that's going to be like, oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a real challenge. We need more regenerative farms that are actually ticking all those boxes. And that takes time. You know, that doesn't happen overnight. So that's the hard work. But once that's actually being, you know, showcased, I think everyone is going to want to, like, no one wants to spend money on inputs, have degraded soil, have crap food, and make no money. Like, that's what farming is for most people. Whereas if you can show a really healthy, vibrant farm, making money and really happy customers, yeah, it's a no-brainer. But that's the hard work. And then, yeah, I think all of it will catch up. I think I don't think any change really ever happens from the top down. It comes from the hard work on the ground, and then the governments will change the policy and change their grant systems
Right.
to support the right ideas, but they're not going to come up with the ideas. They're
Right.
not going to create these farms.
Do you foresee a sort of tipping point where you have enough awareness among consumers, you have enough farmers trained that can pass it on to other farmers, you have enough conventional farms that are destroying themselves and going out of business, and you have then at some point the government following up with the right subsidies and
Exactly.
regulations and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're very close to I think the only bit we're behind on is the showcase farms. That is the bit that we're behind on. We're very close on the consumers ready. We're close on the conventional model, kind of crashing, and the ecosystem crashing. It's just, yeah, showing the thriving farms maybe isn't quite in the mainstream yet. So
Yeah.
that's going to take a bit more time. But yeah, I think it's all about to happen. Like, we're not far away. Another couple of pandemics will certainly shake things up a bit more. And it's what we need, like, as crazy as it is, but it has shaken people up to really realize what's important. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the mad time in history that we live in to be, kind of ride that wave of change.
Yeah.
To be corny.
Well, I mean, it's a good catchphrase, I guess, with your background in surfing and farming. So, do you think this is a good time for you? Like, do you see business-wise a big upswing? Well, let's say from the results of the pandemic.
Yeah, like, certainly the demand is really high. But it's interesting, like, I've been going flat out for years, and to the point where it's, almost burned me out and not very sustainable. So it's really interesting. Like, we're at a really crossroads where, the demand is there, and it would make you think to go really fast and capitalize on the demand. But I'm actually trying to do the exact opposite and go, you know what, we're in this for a long game, and I actually need to slow things down, kind of recoup, and just get the whole foundations of the business and how everything's going to work, really solid, because we want to then start really doing it. But if I keep going fast now and
Yeah.
something slips somewhere and then we end up in, it not working, that's the last thing I want. So it's funny, when everything is telling you to go fast, it's the first time I've ever wanted to go slow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a good thing, because if you get wrapped up in the hype of something, you can fall over, or just, mistakes can happen. So I think it's a good time to actually slow down for a minute, get things in order, and then, yeah, I think the demand ain't going to go away. Like, I think
Right.
that's,
Well, it sounds
yeah,
like a good advice in general in this crazy Instagram tweeting, twerking world that
yeah,
everything goes fast, and you sometimes just have to sit down and look inward and decide
yeah,
like, hey, we don't need to do that.
no, yeah,
My concluding question: you are down. I don't know you personally, obviously, but you come across as a very down to earth man and practical in your approach. But you also seem to have big vision, big dreams. Um, what is your ultimate realized potential? How does a 80-year-old Fergal look back at his life and think like, yeah, I did what I was here for?
yeah, yeah. I always have a big vision that's it's always been the same. It hasn't really changed, but how I get there and how it looks in practical terms does keep evolving. So it's an ever changing kind of what the outcome looks. But yeah, for me, it's like, what's the best way to create the most amount of kind of, I just use regenerative because it's easy for me, but the most regenerative impact, with ecosystems, and then, health of our community, and, building communities again. Like, what can that look like? And there's an idea of, like, the farm here could get bigger and bigger and regenerate more and more land, but I'm actually coming to more of an understanding that's probably not a good model, because bigger doesn't mean better. But creating a good regenerative model and then scaling out the model where we, train up farmers, get them access to land, and you're scaling out rather than up. and yeah, just helping a network of more regenerative farms, and we just regenerate more land. Like for me, if we're regenerating more land and we're building more soil and we're feeding more people healthy food, and it's, building year on year, that's where I'd be happy. And it's nice to imagine, like, we're 60 acres now, but imagine 6,000 acres. And doesn't necessarily need to be our 6,000 acres. It could be anyone, but just 6,000 acres that are being managed holistically, going the right direction, feeding more and more people. Yeah, and just seeing that going out all the time is a nice image to go to sleep to every night.
Yeah. Well, I can totally see that happening with the speed you guys are going at now already. That should be at 80 years old. That should totally be doable.
Yeah, I always have this idea at 87 I might stop working, and
87.
And then for about 3 years I'm gonna kind of just walk around and just soak up, the last few years, and then I'm done. I don't want any more. That's my plan.
Yeah, sounds good. I hope I'll be there to see it happening. I want to thank you a lot for your time and sharing your story with us and your experience. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Nice one. Thank you. Yeah, and come over, visit someday.
Yeah, I would love to. Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Nice one. See ya. Bye-bye.